leadership in universities and research organizations. This is again a very exciting session entitled Gender and Leadership in Higher Education and Research. This is the second session of today. In this session, we're focusing on actions, strategies, and solidarities. A few reminders before I pass on the word to our moderator. We have simultaneous translation available throughout. So if you want to listen to the speakers in Turkish, konuşmacıları Türkçe dinlemek isterseniz lütfen aşağıdaki dünya ikonundan, interpretation menüsünden Korece kanalını seçin. If you want to listen in the original language, you don't have to do anything. You can stay on this channel. The conference is being video recorded. It is broadcasted live on YouTube, and we will also be sharing short video clips afterwards, so you can arrange your cameras and your names as you wish. The microphones are off. We will turn them on when needed. And please write your questions. The speakers can turn them on themselves when it's their turn to speak. And please write your questions for the speakers using the chat box. Our moderator for this session is Yeşim Arat. Yeşim Arat is a professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Boğaziçi University, Istanbul, Turkey. She's worked on questions of women's political participation, Islam, and democratization in Turkey. She's the author of numerous books, among which are The Patriarchal Paradox, Women Politicians in Turkey, Rethinking Islam and Liberal Democracy, Islamist Women in Turkish Politics, Violence Against Women in Turkey, co-authored with Ayşegül Altınay, and they've received the PEN Duygu Asena Award in 2008 for this research, and numerous articles on women as well as Turkish politics. Her last book with Şevket Pamuk is entitled Turkey, Between Democracy and Authoritarianism, published by the Cambridge University Press in 2019. Yeşim Arat has chaired her department for 3 different terms, and she was the provost of her university from 2008 to 2012, and is also a member of the Science Academy in Turkey. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gülru, and good afternoon, everybody. I am delighted to have been invited to this conference. I think it's been a very exciting conference, and I believe our roundtable will be as exciting and as inspiring. We have wonderful people with us who have accepted to be here, and the organizers have scheduled or have shaped this particular panel such that Melsa Ararat will be our first speaker, and then we'll move on to the roundtable group. Octavio will be giving us a presentation, making a presentation, and then we will respond to questions from the organizers and myself within the group. Okay, so perhaps we should just move ahead and initiate this last session of the entitled Gender and Leadership in Higher Education and Research, number 2, Actions, Strategies, Solidarities, and ask Melsa Ararat from Sabancı University to make her presentation. Melsa Ararat is the founding director of Corporate Governance Forum of Turkey at Sabancı University. She's currently a professor of management. She has an amazing corporate background. She's an activist scholar. She launched the Business Against Domestic Violence project in 2015 in cooperation with the UN Population Fund, which did an amazing job of mobilizing Turkey's largest corporations against intimate partner violence. I personally have been very impressed with that project. And so that's why I featured. She has so many other things in her CV. So the floor is yours. Please come on in. Melsa.
Thank you, Yeşim Hocam. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, fellow activists and students. I'm grateful to Gender for inviting me to speak in this very last session of the conference. I hope I can offer some thoughts to trigger a lively discussion during the panel. In the next 15 minutes or so, I will propose that degendering leadership is a categorical imperative for effective leadership. I will then offer my views on strategies that may encourage better representation of women in positions of power based on literature about leadership in business organizations. It's not because that's what I know, but also because I believe business organizations provide a suitable empirical basis, since we live in a world where business experience appears to be a desirable attribute of leadership in many institutional settings, including academia and politics. Not that I think it's a good thing, but that's a reality. Formal decision-making groups are everywhere, and they make decisions that govern every aspect of life. Yet women are vastly underrepresented in these. Firstly, let me register the recent surge of research on gender and leadership. A Web of Science search for articles in this area estimated approximately 4,000 published articles between 1975 and 2016. This topic was a latecomer in research. And 40% of those 4,000 published articles were dated after 2010. My research of yesterday resulted in more than 4,000 publications only during the last 4 years. The remarkable surge in academic interest reflects growing public interest in the topic. It also, I believe, implicitly represents the hope that a shift in the gender composition of leadership may bring socially desirable changes. The perpetual question is, why aren't there more women leaders when public opinion appears to favor more women in leadership roles? I promised Ayşegül not to talk about barriers to women leadership. I will keep my promise and try to focus on the strategies that may deliver the desired change. But proposed strategies must address the root causes of this remarkable underrepresentation of women in leadership. I would like to start by arguing that leadership is not a value-neutral construct. Is anyone who influences others a leader? As one American poet once noted, a leader is someone with the power to project shadow or light onto the world around him or her. Some leadership scholars limit leadership to situations when one or more persons engage with others in such a way that both leaders and followers raise each other to higher levels of motivation for the common goal and higher levels of morality. If we define leadership as a value-based construct, then we need to ask which values matter most for leadership, and does gender play a role? During the opening of this conference, the participants were asked to write down the words that they associate with women leadership. I noted that: fairness, egalitarianism, universalism, participation, participatory decision-making, power sharing, supportive, justice, transparency, togetherness, inclusive, resilience, equity, cooperation. One may argue that the association between these words and women leaders are based on the experiences of a small and biased sample, that is, the participants of the conference. These qualities are, however, confirmed as being associated with female leaders in the field. Women leaders are rated as more effective than men by their managers, men and women, in 17 out of 19 competencies associated with leadership, according to research published by Harvard Business Review. The areas that women are reported to excel by their managers include attributes, as noted by the conference participants: resilience, developing others, collaboration, teamwork, building relations, and displaying high levels of integrity and honesty. Remind you that these are the views of their managers, not their subordinates. And here comes the problem. So the question is, if women are better fit to lead, why is the change so slow? And what strategies may change the status? Even though the research offers multiple reasons why women do not ascend to leadership roles at the same rate as men do, stereotyping and prejudice remain fundamentally important. Stereotypes are sticky and supported by role segregation, which continuously reinforces stereotypical thinking and works against prejudice and discrimination. For example, researchers report that the threat of being stereotyped as incompetent lowers women's leadership performance and aspirations. Furthermore, longitudinal research shows that the self-confidence levels of women in leadership are much lower than that of men. Women do, however, become more self-confident in their leadership role over time and rate themselves as more effective leaders, but only when they reach the age of 60. One line of research focuses on studying motives as antecedents of leadership. Accordingly, men are found to be motivated by power, which is widely associated with leadership and considered to be the great motivator of leadership aspirations. Women, on the other hand, are motivated by affiliation, which is related to team performance. It was indeed remarkable that our keynote speaker of the first day, Professor Subramania, said that she did not perceive herself as a leader. She added, "My mission was to make a difference for the people around me." Even she did not associate this with leadership. If the organizational norms are not supportive of participatory leadership and collaboration, women are not motivated to pursue leadership roles. If they are appointed, however, to leadership positions in such contexts, they are not effective as leaders. I will offer highlights from a selection of research which shows how leadership is gendered. When women hold powerful positions, they have a harder time than men eliciting respect and admiration from subordinates, since leadership is traditionally associated with man and masculine traits. Unless they are able to legitimize their role, relative illegitimacy leads to negative subordinate behavior and reduced cooperation. Of course, organizational policies that lower subordinates' perceptions of power differentials may increase the legitimacy for women in leadership, and that is a strategy that we need to work on. The belief that women are more emotional than men is one of the strongest gender stereotypes. Female leaders can be penalized for even minor or moderate displays of emotion, especially when this emotion conveys dominance, like anger or pride. But being emotionally inexpressive may also result in penalties, because unemotional women are seen as failing to fulfill their warm communal role as women leaders. Women in mixed gender groups are twice as likely as women in single gender groups to suffer from gender stereotype effect by shying away from leadership in areas that are gender incompatible. And the gender stereotype effect persists even for women in single gender groups. Strategies that might work: positive public feedback about a capable woman's performance significantly increases her willingness to lead. Work-life practices are frequently suggested as a strategy for improving women's representation in management. This is valuable, very valuable, but the effect, according to the research, is not immediate. It has an 8 years lag time and does not operate in male-dominant organizational contexts. And then comes the famous Queen Bee effect. Women leaders assimilate into male-dominated organizations by distancing themselves from junior women. The so-called Queen Bee behavior is a response to the discrimination and social identity threat that women may experience in male-dominated organizations. It is not a typically feminine response, but part of a self-group distancing response that is found in other marginalized groups. These are some examples from the field studies in leadership in business organizations. When you consider all these, I think my reaction to the book Lean In is understandable. When the book Lean In became a global phenomenon, my reaction was, don't lean in. Think twice. Is it the right environment? Is the role aligned with who you are? Are you comfortable in your shoes to walk into that role? Or are you required to change your shoes? Of course, reporting requirements, targets, and quotas have been implemented in several countries to increase female representation in leadership, and they have worked in improving the numbers. While this is very desirable as a means for paving the way for changing the stereotypes and organizational norms, the improvements are marginal and insufficient to deliver the expected transformational benefits. Organizations can easily flip back to male-dominant governance with a simple change at the person at the very top, unless a culture of equity, participative decision-making, deliberative democracy, and supportive policies are embedded into the cultural fabric of the organizations through, for example, written policies, goals, targets, and reporting. Let me give you an example from corporate boards, the area of my research. The legally imposed quotas for representation of women on corporate boards resulted in substantial increase in the percentage of female directors on boards. Boards are the highest decision-making body of companies, but the organizational leader is the CEO, the head of the execution. He or she decides on what the organization is going to be, what would be the organizational policy, what would be the culture of the organization, and they set an example by who they are. While the percentage of women on boards have increased considerably over the years, the percentage of female CEOs has not changed at all. In Turkey, for example, the percentage of women on boards changed from 12% to 17% in 8 years. But the percentage of female CEOs remained at 3%, no change. There are only 17 women CEOs in Turkey among the listed largest corporations in Turkey, 17. Representation does not necessarily translate into benefits either. Women who can make it to the top differ from the overall population of women. Our research shows that this deviation is larger in societies with a higher gender gap. And in these cases, women in leadership positions are less effective. When women behave like men, the benefits of diversity don't materialize. And that is what happens in societies where there is a larger gender gap. Women to come to that point of power need to behave like men because they need men's support to be included among themselves, the social identity theory suggests. Research suggests that the positive effect of increased representation of women on corporate boards depending on many, many factors. So straightforward answers to every situation that quotas or targets work is not correct. My conclusion is that achieving gender equality at leadership positions requires transformations at all levels and all spheres. It can't be separated from the elimination of all forms of discrimination and prejudice. Men and women are and should be leaders. Men and women can be equally effective leaders, provided that the leadership role is not gendered and it does not conflict with their self-identity. Solidarity between men and women based on sharing a higher order identity, for example, as feminists, and positioning men and women as agents of change towards a common cause may be more effective. The He for She campaign has been very successful in mobilizing men for gender equality as a social goal. The social purpose of the campaign is not to put individual women in positions of power and influence, but to mobilize collective action for a social change. Perhaps We for She is a better name for that change, as women's resilience and solidarity are proven to be essential for mobilizing collective changes. We can't expect that from men. Lastly, I'll keep my promise to Ayşegül and finish with a positive note on who we see as leaders today. The leaders of today, the female leaders of today, are not our grandmothers' leaders. They're not Iron Ladies. They are Gretas. They are pregnant presidents. They are fragile-looking, skinny girls. They try to change the world. And I think there is hope. Even an organization like IMF has a different tone in their communications when they had a passionate feminist as their leader. If you haven't listened to her, I suggest just tune in and listen to what she says about how the world could be different if women are empowered and sharing the power of changing the world. I think that's all I have to offer at the moment. I hope it triggers an interesting debate. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Wonderful, Melsa. Yeah. Melsa threw a very large net for us. And I think, she did keep her promise to Ayşegül. I think, at the end, it's really what she said about the new leaders is extremely inspiring. And what she said, her introduction of this concept of leaning in, leaning out, we need to lean out, is very crucial, I think, in thinking realistically about the prospects of transformative leadership. And I certainly appreciated her gendered approach to how leadership is right now is structured. Now we turn, we will bracket the question answer period and turn to the roundtable as such. But perhaps before we begin, I should remind the participants that the people in the roundtable have been given questions to respond to in the roundtable, in their responses, and Gülru has sent them 4 questions. The 3 of them have to do, they are issues, questions that were addressed earlier on in the conference. But her first question was about the actions that would work better when promoting gender equality in universities or research organizations. She asked the participants, the leaders, change agents and experts, what are some actions? And then her second question was on the strategies that they found useful, the strategies of resistance, resilience, overcoming the challenges. And her third question was on solidarities. Again, discussed before, but what kind of solidarities are needed? What do we reach to? What do we cultivate? And what these solidarities should be across institutions, within institutions. And so I think we will respond to these 3 issues in the roundtable, 3 questions on action, strategies, solidarities. And I personally would like to encourage you to focus on the gendered nature of these positive and you know, important action strategies, solidarities we need to build to have this transformative leadership. Well, you know, as women, we have been socialized in certain gender roles, and at times in positions of leadership, they help us, and at times they do obstruct us. I know in my administrative, when I was doing administrative work, you know, this traditional "don't talk, listen" advice that I got from my parents helped me a lot when I was trying to understand the faculty, for example, who had a lot of complaints about the way things were being, you know, handled. And hearing was very helpful. But then at other times, this became a disadvantage, and I had to be more pushy, more, you know, aggressive, if you will. So, you know, when do they have? When does you know? When do these gender roles help us? And yes, roles are leadership roles are gendered, but I think you know, we might have some kind of leverages or resources in our traditional you know, repertoire, and sometimes be aware that we need to go beyond them and, you know, develop skills to negotiate and to basically reach out, as Melsa was saying, in order to be able to change things and to lean out, to bring about, you know, all around transformative change. Okay, so with Gülru's 3 questions and my concern with the gendered nature of those you know, the examples that you will give, I would like to ask Octavio Salazar to give his presentation. Octavio is a professor of constitutional law in the University of Cordoba, Spain, and he is a member of the Equality Commission of his university, and he has been a principal investigator of a project on interpretation of laws in terms of gender equality, giving new interpretations to make laws accommodate or feature gender equality, in my words. So I think, you know, he's in a very important position to address us and tell us on how to act, or strategies and solidarities we need to devise. Okay, Octavio, please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the organizer of the second conference, this opportunity, this invitation. I would like to analyze in my speech, I expect. Okay. All right. I will now analyze whether universities are contributing to gender equality, or on the contrary, they are maintaining a patriarchal order and sexist culture. When we are talking about female leadership and change in leadership, I think it's essential thing about the role of universities, in this objective. Before explaining possible action and strategies, with special attention to the Spanish experience, I'll do a brief explanation about the role of university in the contemporary societies. I would like to remember in 2020, the European Commission showed this gender equality strategy and set up these 6 objectives, main objectives. And I think it's important to think about what is the role of the university in this strategy, And third, I think we have to ask ourselves what is the university for in the context of the contemporary societies, no? Okay, I think the universities move in the tension between maintaining order and transforming reality. Specifically, we can distinguish the following functions: training, professional, education of citizens, generation of knowledge, construction of collective imaginaries, management of practice and authority, definition of priorities in the societies, legitimation of powers, and fix the canon. In this context, I have a question. Is the university a key to overcome male culture, gender injustice, and patriarchal order? Or on the contrary, is a machine that maintains and reproduces masculine powers, androcentric knowledge, and a contents blind to gender mainstreaming, no? What is the reality of universities in the 21st century? Have they carried out, as SARA said, the feminist digestion? I don't think so. I would like to highlight some factors that show that we are far from real equality in universities. First, the university continues to be a masculinized power. It's a privileged place for the production of sexist practice for everyday male culture. It still has a hierarchical structure with a lack of transparency. We find a lot of passive resistance to change. It has a privileged relationship with power structure, economic, political, cultural power, and it's not the same relation with, for example, social movement or social organization. We can find also a progressive adaptation to the neoliberal framework. We can talk about academic capitalism. The gender perspective continues to be devalued and ignored. Also, many people talk about gender ideology. Feminism is not a part of the content of and research, but less of epistemology. And the gender mainstreaming has turned into a liquid one category. No? In the last year, gender has become a category without political content, a kind of catch-all box. Gender studies often focus on debate about sexual or diversity, sexual diversity, but where are women in this kind of meaning? Where is the political subject of feminism? In Spain, in the last decade, we can find many experiences about the objective of try to do universities and privileged space to gender equality. After this law of 27, law about universities in Spain, we can find in universities equality units, equality plans, protocols against sexual and gender-based harassment, training and awareness activity, co-responsibility plans, chair of feminist or women's studies, introduction of specific subjects in undergraduate and postgraduate courses, partnership with other institutions with competence in the field of gender equality. Before this law, in 24, the law against gender violence include this article where we can see that universities shall include and promote training, teaching, and research in gender equality. After this law, in the law of the equality between men and women, law of 27, we can find also this article 25 about equality in higher education. In this article, we can read, promote teaching and researching on the meaning and scope of equality, and particular public administration should promote. In this article, we can find a soft law. It's not a law when the characteristics establish recommendation, promotion mandate, but not binding standard. And this is a problem about law of gender equality and about gender equality in university. We have recommendation, we have promotion mandate, but not binding standard. I think we need a feminist agenda for the university. And a feminist agenda for the university should include the following objectives. University department specializing in feminist and gender studies, incorporation of gender-specific subjects in all university degrees, incorporation of feminist theory and debates, feminist debates in all university degrees, feminist training and awareness of teachers, researchers, and university staff, introduction of the feminist perspective in the evaluation criteria of teaching and research projects, introduce also feminist and gender studies of a specific area in evaluation of research activity, and break with the feminization and masculinization of 13 degrees. And last, and I think it's very important, visibility and recognition of women as subjects with scientific authority. In this sense, I think it's very important, the importance of feminist genealogy. Also it's important the collaboration and alliance with public institutions, association and social movement, and university as an active part of the feminist movement, with campaigns or demonstration. And I think the mandate of parity in both government institution and evaluation agency is essential. It's an essential key to change the university. Also, I think men had to be a part of this feminist university agenda. We must remember how the Council of Europe in this gender equality strategy said the involvement of men and boys is critical to the achievement of gender equality. The role of men in both the public and private affairs is critical to make progress towards real gender equality. They must be a part of this feminist agenda. How to involve men and boys in this feminist agenda? I think it's essential include the men transformation as a topic of study in research projects and teaching. It could be essential training boys as agents of equality, create a specialized publication, awareness campaigns, groups for men and boys to reflect and to work about equality, about the role of men in this objective of gender equality. And I would like to underline 3 commitments of university men: overcoming passive resistance, coherence between curriculum and vitae, and being anti-sexist in the practice in everyday life. I think at the end, the university needs a real revolution. I think university has to make its feminist revolution, and the university must have an essential role in the feminist revolution of society. At the end, I think this is a question of power, and this is a question of culture. Change power and change culture. Stolz, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you will close the... yeah, you. We still see your presentation. Perhaps if you would close it.
I don't know how to close the.
Cancel the spotting. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, great, Octavio. This was wonderful. I think you brought out more systematically many of the themes that did come out in the conference in the previous 2 days. And I mean, the actions and strategies in Spain were very instructive. And again, many of the themes that came up were parsimoniously brought forth in your presentation. And the way you underline the role of man and how man could be made, how to shape man, how to change them, transform them, were very important points. Again, building on the experiences of men who were pro-gender equality frameworks in universities that we saw this morning. I think tied beautifully. Now we turn to the round table, and as I mentioned, we'll have, if you will, Maria Lucinda Fonseca from University of Lisbon. Maria is a professor of human geography and migration studies at the Institute of Geography and Spatial Planning, University of Lisbon. And she has served on numerous management and leadership positions at the University of Lisbon. She's been a pro-rector, member of General Council of the University, dean, president of the Scientific Council of the Institute of Geography and Spatial Planning. And she is part of the consortium. So Maria, if you will, please join us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and good morning for those of you that are in Portugal, to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this kind invitation to participate in this roundtable. Well, I'm not a gender expert, so my reflections will be based on my experience of serving in different positions at the university level and also at the school level, as was already been mentioned. And of course, my leadership position is rooted in a particular and an individual and institutional political context that in a way explain how I have got access to these positions, and also some of the strategies I followed during my mandates in different places. And one important element is to the gender leadership role. This is really very, very important, and is one of the main obstacles that women in leadership position face. So I think that it's really very important that first of all, we need to have clear goals to be determined and responsive. We need to be self-confident and communicate values and objectives very clearly to our colleagues, the academic and research staff, to the students, are crucial elements in this process of institutional change, because they are the future and they are more open-minded. And also, we can't forget the administrative and technical staff. This is really very important. We need to listen to people's concerns and aspirations. This is very important to understand and identify the main problems, the main barriers. As a geographer, I used to do a lot of field work. So the first thing I've done was to visit everyone in their workplace and listen to their suggestions, their concerns, and to the suggestions they have. And this was really very, very important to me in order to align expectations and create a common vision. So I always took an holistic perspective to address inequality, not only gender inequality, but social inequality, different kinds of disadvantages we face. And here I must tell you that my individual history is important because I was born in a peripheral region of the Portugal. At the time, we didn't have high schools in my home village and so on. And there was really very poor people that need to migrate to France, to Germany, and elsewhere. So I very early became aware of the inequalities because it was really terrible to see my colleagues in the primary school concerned because their parents migrated illegally to France and to Germany. So it was really very important, this awareness of social inequalities in my home region. And of course, being a girl, and my dream was to be a professor, of course it was difficult. And my parents and my professor in primary school were really very, very important. So to have good mentors is really crucial in all stages of our life. So because I was a girl, of course, my parents facing some problems, we didn't have high school and not low incomes and so on, but to move a girl to a different city living alone was really problematic. So I started to become aware of these inequalities since I was a young girl. But I'm a lucky person. So I've always been stimulated to fight and try to develop clear goals and never gave up. So, and I was so fortunate that my mentors, always in the university and so on, always stimulated this kind of attitude. And another important contextual element is the Portuguese Revolution. So when I entered the university, it was the year before the Portuguese Revolution. And students played a very important role in this process of democratization, in participation, and so on. So I would say it was my school. And with colleagues, we participated in all the discussions of reforms of the department. The geography department at that time, we were not a faculty like we are now. And we discussed in groups with the staff members and so on. So I learned how important it is to work together and learn from different experiences, the creativity of the young people, the students. We were convinced that it was possible to change the world. We went to visit the shanty towns in the peripheral neighborhoods of Lisbon, and we came to the professors of anthropology, asking them, you have to change the subjects you teach us because you need to help us to provide solutions, a response to these social inequalities. And this is why, and in this environment, that I could participate even before being, before finishing my PhD, to be a member of the Directive Commission of the Center for Geographical Studies. So this was really very important. Listen people, learn about their concerns and aspirations, promote optimism and enthusiasm, make pay attention to little details. And that's what I've tried to do when I was appointed as a vice dean of the Faculty of Humanities. So I paid attention of little details, like to provide a decent space for people to have their meals, and also listen to the aspirations of the students to introduce new subjects in the curriculum, and listen to the problems that my colleagues, of course, have. They have children, and then we provide the nursery in the school. So this kind of attitudes, and at the same time, people feel more mobilized and committed to participate in this process of change at that time. So I think that this is really very, very important. And to tackle inequalities in an holistic perspective. So this, for me, was really very, very important. And based on my own experience and all these kind of conversations and discussions and so on, of course, we need to fight against this meritocracy, which is in the neoliberal university, one of the biggest problems that we face. Because, of course, women, because of gender roles and so on, don't have the same opportunities as men. And when we assess, and when in this process of assessment and so on, of course, we look at the number of papers that men write and the research projects that they can get funds and so on. So women don't feel like they have the conditions to participate and to take a leadership role because of this gender construction of leadership. And that's always what they have tried to fight against, to degender this leadership role. So that's why, because I'm lucky, of course, and I got the support of my mentor. So mentoring is really important. Apply to research funds, to projects, and try to involve and motivate young researchers to participate. So then we can get this kind of recognition and show how important it is to take care of small details, the work environment, the work conditions, and the care work that the staff, the women, provide to students. This is really very important because we need to fight against this meritocracy ideal. Ranking. All directors and managers are always thinking and taking decisions based on Shanghai ranking and all kinds of rankings and so on. But it's important to show the inequalities of opportunities we have, to pay attention to that and illustrate that if we provide better conditions for all, and you address this kind of inequalities, and we discuss the criteria to the assessment criteria, of course, the institution can perform better. And that's why in my former department of geography, that I would say within the context of the university is quite inclusive, we managed to be recognized at the level of the university and become an autonomous school. So in 2008, so we left the Faculty of Humanities and we became an autonomous school based on our merit related with research, teaching, but also providing facilities for all. I can tell you that when I was pro-rector of the university, believe me, my first action was to provide houses for 15 families that were living in a shanty town in the campus. So this was really problematic. And everybody was telling that the rector was crazy, appointing a young woman, not full professor, the only woman, the youngest, not yet full professor at that time, and giving this job of taking care of all the infrastructures, buildings, equipment, management of the campus, and so on. And for me, was incredible to have 15 families, most of them with an immigrant background, Cape Verdeans, living in the shanty town. They stay there after the construction of a new building. They stay there for 20 years, living in containers, and nobody cares. And one of the deans of one of the faculties decided to build a wall around the shanty town, and it was a shock for me. So, and the rector as well, but people didn't believe. After that, they were, and I never cope with this kind of prejudice. The rector should have appointed an engineer or an architect and so on, a woman, young woman, to do this job. And in fact, I think after that, I never accepted this kind of prejudice. Sometimes I ask during meetings and so on, if I face this kind of prejudice, please go out. I can't stand with this, and mobilizing people, creating alliances, going to the municipality, showing the problems of these people. I've surveyed the families themselves, and they called me the girl of the university and so on. And 6 months, I brought the minister there. And he told me, well, when I made this proposal, everybody was shocked in the rectoral team, including the rector. But during a visit of the minister of the university, and I was making the point of the problems we have and difficulties and so on. So, and the minister really liked to visit it. So it was this kind of holistic approach that then created the opportunity for other people and other women to voice their concerns and start to create awareness of gender inequalities in the university. So that's why I think that this kind of mobilization and address this kind of resistances are really very important to make change. And we need to be agents of change. This is really a crucial element because there is the idea that merit will solve all the difficulties and all the problems. So we need to tackle this and create groups of alliance inside and outside the institution in order to face all these barriers. Of course, it takes time. It's very difficult. Okay, sorry, I'm so enthusiastic, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I realize we're all beginning to converge on certain points. Melsa began by giving us good Greta as the examples for future leadership, and Octavio told us how to mobilize and re-socialize boys for gender equality, and Lucinda is also underlining how the future is the students, the young generation, mentors for including the young, good mentors, including young people, and of course, mobilizing and resisting pressures for inequality. Great. So now we turn to And mind you, as I wrote to you earlier, we have, it's 2 o'clock. And as I wrote to you before, for the first round, we take 5 minutes each. I know I have not been, following. I mean, Octavio won't come, so he had his 10 minutes. So if you will be aware of the time, it will be, we'll have more time for questions. So I will now turn to Dr. Astrid Schloerscheidt. She is the Pro-Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty of Health and Sciences at Oxford Brookes University, England. She's a cognitive neuroscientist. She was a scientific expert on a sub-working group of the European Food Safety Authority reviewing scientific evidence on effects of nutrition on cognition and mental health. And among other administrative roles and other deanships she has had. Okay, please, Dr. Astrid.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation to this roundtable. Really appreciate the opportunity. As you already highlighted, I think we're starting to converge on various topics. So I just kind of, to keep it brief, I thought I might just kind of bring in a few thoughts here. And I was just looking at the chat, and Melsa was asking a question: how can academy transform to an agent of feminist revolution? And certainly the perspective I've brought to this, or want to bring to this roundtable, is from a kind of a practitioner type role, in the sense that I am in a leadership role, and I've approached this very much from an experiential perspective. And my answer to that question would be, we do this by trying to fill universities with authentic female leaders. And that's certainly the way in my leadership role, I'm trying to approach this. Now, an observation that I wanted to make is that, in my experience at least, it seems to me it's always easier to create action and culture change if there are external pressures. And one example in the UK, for instance, is the Athena Swan Charter that was introduced in 2005, which in universities were at a certain point required to have this charter, a certain level of award within this charter, in order to be able to apply for research funding. And that created an awful lot of pressure to start dealing with the question of gender equality, which was initially only for women in STEM subjects, but it has now broadened out to the arts, humanities, and social sciences, and indeed professional services staff. So gender equality has become much more of a topic, but I think it has become more of a topic largely because of external pressures that were applied. So I think that's been a good thing in many respects. I think what that prompts is reflection and action. And what action works, of course, is always very much dependent on context. And I think Octavio's already given many examples of how universities can further this agenda through their educational remit and through their research remit. But I think from a leadership perspective, I think what we can do really is that we need to think about how we develop careers of women to enter leadership positions. And that's something that, to me as a leader, is a very important aspect of my leadership role. And for me, that's kind of partially cultural and partially structural, in the sense that the way we line manage people, men and women, and indeed people who do not identify as either, the kind of non-binary genders that we now also encounter much more openly. It's about giving opportunities for career development, and I think mentoring has been mentioned many times. Structured good mentoring on a one-to-one basis around actual opportunities within own institutions or elsewhere, I think creates leadership opportunities for women. The other thing, I think we need to always look at our structures and the support we provide, generally speaking. So with respect to Athena Swan Agenda, we looked very, very closely at how we deal with women who have maternity leave and their return to, for instance, a research role or a research active academic role, trying to provide the opportunity to say, catch up, to re-establish themselves as female researchers so that there is no disadvantage from having had time off potentially. It's very small things that can make a huge difference to people's career progression and their ability to develop their leadership potential. In terms of strategies, I think one of the things that I have always found very useful is constructive challenge. It's the idea that one creates a topic, which brings me back to external pressures that help with that particular agenda, and keeping the topic alive. That is, I think, can be gendered in the way that, you know, you need to keep the topic of gender equality. How do we achieve gender equality? Challenging the structures, thinking interview panels or things like that, promotion criteria. How do we look at these structures and these processes in a way that takes into account that different people have different experiences? That, of course, applies to women who have been socialized in certain ways, that may have had certain life experience that you just cannot ignore. It applies to other people for whom there are structural barriers that need to be removed. So looking at those things, and I think in this case from a female perspective, from my own life experience and professional experience perspective, helps to define structures and processes in a different way. And me as a person in a leadership position am fortunate to be in a position where I can have that influence and therefore hopefully create opportunities for other people. One thing I wanted to bring in the discussion is that I think it actually goes both ways, really. There is what needs to be done in an organization, in an institution, but I think there also needs to be the self-reflection. So as a leader, I have to challenge myself constantly to think of myself as a leader. And I think, Melsa, you referred to that earlier on, that women have a tendency not to think of themselves as leaders, but kind of think of their motivations in different ways. And that is certainly true, and that I think is good, and it can be very beneficial to organizations. But at the same time, we need to challenge ourselves that we actually are leaders and we have those opportunities, and we must take them to change, to effect change. And I think in that context also, I don't like the word gender neutral. I don't think there is such a thing as gender neutrality, and Octavio referred to it. We need to be anti-sexist. I very much subscribe to that. We need to be absolutely clear that there are differences in experience, and that those differences in experience matter in terms of opportunities and how they affect a woman's or also a man's ability to have a career and to develop into leadership positions. So I think that is a challenge which goes along for me with a kind of strategy of constructive challenge, to basically repeat that, to ensure that that is understood in the wider organization. In terms of solidarities, for me, really the common theme here is the lack of equality of opportunities. So I think it applies to women, it applies to other genders, but it's also, of course, found in other underrepresented groups. And I'm just kind of thinking here of the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, there are similar issues in terms of equality of opportunity. And if we have a solidarity with other groups, other people who experience that lack of equality of opportunity, I think that is who we need to work with in order to effect change. And that's within an institution, that could between institutions, of course, in terms of policy. You know, there are many, many levels at which that can be effective. And I think I probably want to leave it here, and hopefully we can pick some of this up in conversation later on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Astrid. Thank you very much. Yes, there are all these teams emerging together, and you did carry it forward. Importance of external pressure is something we need to keep in mind and note, and differences in experiences in access to equality or equality of opportunity included in both strategies, actions, and solidarities. We're thinking of cultivating or undertaking are very important points we need to build on. All right, and Zehra, would you like to come in? Zehra Sayers. Zehra Sayers is the former president of Sabancı University and a professor of biophysics at Sabancı University. She was the chair of the scientific advisory committee of the International Synchrotron Radiation Facility Project Sesame, and received much recognition and awards for this particular role she played. And she's a member of the Science Academy, honorary member of the Science Academy Turkey. And now, Zehra, 5 minutes, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. And I feel very privileged to be among all the practitioners of the field of gender studies. I'm not in this field at all, but I must say that this meeting has been very illuminating and inspiring for me. I found myself in some kind of leadership positions, as Melsa has defined it in a rather broad way. And I had to take maybe some kind of responsibilities in the national scene and also in the international scene. But I would like to also mention that I consider this gender inequalities or issues as a subset of general equality and non-discrimination issue. So I would like to see it as a whole rather than just specific, because there are also people, which was mentioned by Fuat Keman this morning, that maybe there are several disadvantages or discriminated groups, like being a woman, being a foreigner, being Black, being all this at the same time. So one has to see, to my mind, one has to see the issue of equality and non-discrimination as a whole. And I certainly appreciate bringing up the gender aspect of it, because this also brings us to the point of solidarities that one can have, and also trying to find creative ways of dealing with discrimination. I will just say a few things from my own experience. As I said, I'm not an expert in the field. What I would like to mention is that I came from, or I come from a female-dominated family. Yeşim knows this very well. Both at home and at work, females were dominant in my environment. But on the other hand, there was a subtle message underneath that I only realized afterwards, that yes, being a woman is fantastic. Yes, you can achieve a lot of things. Yes, you have to stand on your own 2 feet and do things. But you're also in the background. You should know your limits, or you should put up with certain things, some misbehavior, let's say, from other genders. You should just sort of turn your head and walk away, or take it, maybe not take it so seriously, but you should know that they will always be there. Now, this was, for me, a confused message, because I did grow up in an environment which gave me tremendous amount of self-confidence, which then helped me a lot later on the way. But when I became aware of this kind of, let's say, invisible discrimination, you know, everybody was telling me I was equal, but yet on the other hand, in real life practice, I could see some signs that this was not always the case. So I could turn this to my advantage, and I could say, well, okay, now you are aware, now you should be careful as to how you analyze situations. So this taught me, I must say, to be patient, to have long view of events and actions, and be aware that there may be other issues than the ones that are on the surface. And this is the reason why I also see gender discrimination as a part of a bigger picture, I think, because I developed this kind of awareness of different kinds of discriminations. And this also taught me to work with men. I did a lot of work with men. I had very good mentors who have supported me all throughout my career. And so this was very useful for me. And also I made use of some characteristics that women have, which we also see today in the leaders that were mentioned earlier, that our leaders, women, female leaders, are more empathic, they are more better in communication, they're better in outreach, they're better in understanding. And also, I think women are much better at taking risks because, well, maybe this is controversial, but I will say it. We're not afraid of losing face. Because, and I think this is really a biological thing, because as far as we are concerned, the most important thing are the children that we carry and we give birth to. And we are prepared to take a lot of risks for them, if nothing else. So we're not afraid. We will do a lot of things from out of our own motivation and our own strength. So I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about what we think are important points for leadership in the future. So if we're going to have a chance, then I will stop here and leave that to later. Thank you.
Thank you, Zehra. Thank you very much. Yes, we had awesome mothers, but they served the food on the table for our fathers. You're absolutely right. I mean, you again took the net where you know, Melsa was taking this more larger structural change and the larger net where there are all these different types of inequalities. But the emphasis both of you were making makes me think about we mentioned how this gender inequality was a subset of other inequalities. Absolutely, you're right. It just makes me, I mean, that emphasis makes me question if a transformative leadership for gender equality can be a means to fight other inequalities as well. Yes, there's a chicken and egg problem, but it can be interactive. I mean, we can push for gender equality leadership, transformative leadership, which can transform these other inequalities, just as we are trying to get these other inequalities to work for us. But anyway, that's for later. I will now turn to our last but not least speaker, again a member of the consortium, Milica Antić Gaber, and Milica is a sociology professor in the University of Ljubljana. She served 2 mandates as the head of Slovene Sociological Association. She was also a member of the Expert Forum of European Institute for Gender Equality, and is currently a member of the Equality Council at Slovenia's Ministry of Labor, the Family, Social Affairs and Equal Opportunities. So please, Milica, okay.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank to the organizers for the invitation to talk in this roundtable among excellent and respectful guests. Namely, I do not consider myself a leader, maybe rather a change agent or gender expert with limited experiences in leadership. But I also draw my experience from researching on women in politics in high echelons of politics, such as women MPs and ministers. Also, my experience in introducing gender equality policies are the combination of my previous work in women's organizations and feminist groups, and my research experiences, and only recently and partially from my involvement in a leadership. As everybody referred to their personal life, let me also do that. In my personal life, I can say that I was brought up by a patriarchal father and a feminist mother. Of course, they were not aware of this, but they influenced me. And I was also brought up in a working class migrant family in Slovenia with limited access to promotion, social promotion, and that also affected my ambition for quite some time. As we don't have much of time to respond to this complex set of really super important questions, I will briefly and only list and shortly explain them. From my experience, I would say that taking the leading position either in an institution or as a change agent in promoting gender equality in universities and research, the following strategies were helpful to me in my work in this field. I would begin with saying that before starting any initiative, building a wide enough coalition is one of the most important conditions. Saying this, I think that the coalition should consist not only from your group of supporters, but one should also find supporters from the individuals, men included, of course, who are visible, outspoken, who possess power, who are opinion makers, etc., to address and overcome the resistance of those who would say this is an unimportant matter and important mainly only for the rare few. Conceptualizing and presenting a clear picture and clear goals is important at the very beginning, but at the same time, it has to be clear that there can be different ways to reach these goals and that each participant can add something to these goals. I think that building trust among participants in the action is also crucial. Preparing their arguments for those who will oppose me or us and learn from the experience of the similar policies and cases also from abroad should help not to bump to immediate total rejection. I found that presenting the case or argument in a friendly, non-threatening way helps that people listen to you in a different way and may be more inclined to your proposals. Also, explaining at the very beginning are the good sides of this initiative or project that will be beneficial to everyone involved and also to wider public can be a good start. I'm saying nothing new that presenting the data and information that will speak on their own right demonstrate that the changes are really needed or urgent. But also, if possible, involving in the process of change the individuals who can speak from their own experiences in a way that will explain the human, personal side of the issue. This will also help others to approach to these issues from the other side, not only a rational or scientific one. To connect and get supported from the gender equality bodies, from international agents and state institutions that deal with equality is also very important, as well as to make networks with other institutions in higher education that already have some experiences and achievements to share with us. Leaving enough time and space to people to speak, I found very important. Listen to their arguments and respond to them in a respectful manner, especially to those with whom you are in a completely different position, ideological spectrum or theoretical position. And also one should not be rude and humiliate the participants who are not on your side. From my experience, it is rewarding to pay a special attention and mentor the younger women who are not yet experienced in public debate, encourage them to talk, give them space for engagement and presence, and appreciate their support. Giving credit or prize in my culture in Slovenia is not largely present, especially not to or among women. But in my opinion, this is very important for coalition building and enlarge a group of supporters. But not only that, from my experience, it is very important to respect the experienced women too, and their previous work in this field and give them credit for their previous work and achievements. Fighting for women's rights and gender equality in previous decades was even more difficult than today. And using the knowledge and the expertise on gender equality in explaining the goals is very important, but it is as crucial explaining these issues and goals in a way that also the ones who are not familiar with them will follow you with comfort. And when we talk about gender, we have to bear in mind intersectionality of gender with race, nationality, age, gender identity, education, special needs, and many others, as we should not left aside the groups of women that are in a especially underprivileged position. And as we are time limited, let me finish with this and leave some more time for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Milica. Yes, now you took us again in line with what Maria Lucinda did to the more micro processes of this transformative leadership, in a sense, underlying the importance of featuring clear goals and trying to build trust and listening to arguments, listening to the other side, and being inclusive and mentoring the young people, the people who don't have the experience, and trying to shape their careers. You know, this more macro level points are also, I think, extremely important. All right, I think we can have again a very short second round on Gülru's final question. Basically, it is a sum-up question of the whole conference. As you know, last session of the conference, and she has asked, she would like to, ask us. She wants us to respond to she has said in her words, what would you say are the elements of transformative and inclusive leadership? So, in one or two sentences, so that we can have some kind of, take some questions from the participants. What is an element of this transformative, inclusive leadership that you deem most important? Can we have another round, especially among the people who took, these 5 minutes, 5-minute presentations? Perhaps again we can begin with Maria Lucinda. So, what would you say these constitutive features of transformative leadership is, based on what this whole conference has talked about, the experiences, the more theoretical presentations that we had in the conference, different conceptions of leadership, or criticisms of leadership. Yasemin is saying, well, no leaders, actors. Yesterday she was saying that. So, Lucinda.
Okay, thank you. Well, very briefly, I think that awareness raising of inequalities is crucial. Co-creation to respond and to promote a more inclusive environment is key to transformation, and it's the key to promote creativity and innovation. Mentoring is very important. Role models, because this idea of leadership, the masculine leadership, and role models, I think are really very, very important. Building coalitions, join forces, internally and externally, and including men. I think it's really very, very important. According to my experience, we need to bring in everybody. And we think that we should not to aspire to change everything immediately. I think that small wins, changing everyday practices, are really very, very important. So what Deborah Meyerson calls managing as temperate radical, I think that's very, very important. So this is what I think are the basics to fight against this meritocracy. Of course, we need to create and as leaders, new models of assessment and recognizing and rewarding different academic models, I think is very important. Because recognizing, for instance, excellent teaching, which is not recognized at all if we look at rankings, matters for the quality of education that students receive and to prepare them to be actors of change and for this institutional change. I think this kind of recognition and also care work are very, very important. You are muted.
Can you unmute yourself? I can't unmute you. Okay.
Oh, sorry, you're waiting for me. So yeah, so for me, really, it's the very open acknowledgement of the problem that comes first for transformational leadership. It needs to be clear that there is a problem and everybody needs to realize that there is a problem and it needs to be talked about. There need to be open conversations about the problem. For me also what's very important is listening to the experience of others if it's not your own and believing it to be true. Just because it isn't your own doesn't mean it isn't real. And I think that can inform any actions you take, any strategies you develop. And I think that's important in terms of gender, but it's important in terms of other inequalities. Race, for instance, is a big topic at the moment. So it's that kind of listening to the experience of others and being informed by it. For me, also, one of the big things is structural change and not being afraid to take risks. I think often institutions, organizations use structures and processes as a safety net, as a crutch. And I think that is something we need to move away from in order to remove structural barriers, but also to really make use of the potential of the experience that may be unusual, that may be non-traditional, not what we are used to. And I think structures, rigid structures that come from a certain kind of historical perspective, that may come from a male-dominated perspective when we talk about gender, or a race-dominated perspective if we talk about race, need to really be reviewed, re-examined, and opened up in a way that currently is probably not yet the case.
Okay, thank you. All right, then we have Zehra.
Okay, I think most of the things I'll say have already been said, but I would also say campaigning for awareness of qualities in women. These qualities we are observing now at time of crisis and risks that the world is facing. Women have shown their outstanding qualities, and highlighting these role models are important. Another point is the rethinking of benchmarks. I mean, like this, what we've been talking, and this requires that we move out of our comfort zone of numbers. You have things like H-index or God knows what, a lot of things. But we have to devise a lot of new methods for assessing, ensuring quality. And that takes time, and that again takes taking risks, because as we say in Turkish, somebody has to put their hand under the stone in order to say that these qualities are worth counting as the number things. Another point is training boys. I think this is very important, and this is also a partly job of a lot of women as well as men to train boys and to ensure that this mentality is secured. And the other point that I would like to make is international standards. We should try to adopt international standards for deciding on equality and non-discrimination.
Thank you. Thank you, Zehra. And Milica?
Yeah, sorry. From my experience, I am aware that not all the knowledge is produced in academia, and listen to and include the people who work on the issue of gender equality outside academia and in other fields, not only in academic and research, is very important. And to listen also to the people everyday's life experience, I think, is crucial. So in my experience, I think that to connect with civil society and feminist-oriented groups and gender studies are the product of the cooperation between these two is very important. But also cooperation with, let's say, in the last time, in the last period with LGBT plus communities is a crucial one. Supporting their rights in public and media from my side and including them into my lectures, for example, to talk about their issues, widened my insight and also enable my group to cooperate with another marginalized groups. I also learned that being ready to listen and help anybody that asks you for a help or support will take some time, of course, but it will be rewarding. And learning from those who experience different kind of discrimination and include them in your research and teaching, students can learn from them what you cannot explain them through your lectures. For example, I was with a group of my PhD students and young researchers collecting the life stories of migrant women and life stories of imprisoned women. And they were invited to participate in my class and talk to my students. And we have all learned a lot from their experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Octavio, would you like to come in?
Yeah. Yes, I am the only man in this round table, and I think the real problem are men, but not in the sense of the individual subject, but in the sense of the male culture. No? I think it's impossible to change leadership without changing men. No? And I think it's necessary to make two strategies. No? Change leadership means change the sense of merits, abilities, capacities. No? I think now in the contemporary societies, leadership is a perfect suit for men, but not for women. And we have to change many things around this, the content of this leadership. The organization, times, the relation between public and private sphere, organization of jobs and private life, family life. No? I think this is essential to change this model. And second one, I think it's necessary to change the sense of power. I think nowadays, power is a kind of gentleman's agreement. It's necessary to change this agreement between men if we want to have more women with power and with authority. I think men have a real problem with the recognition of authority women. We have, for example, women with authority in collective imagination. No? Children in the school have not women with power, with authority in their references, no? About history, about their culture. Anything, I think it's very important to change this model of power and this model of leadership.
Thank you. Melsa, you want to come in?
Thank you. I support, of course, all the comments by other speakers, but I'd like to emphasize one more important thing. Transformative leadership is about creating a vision for the future. And women are great in organizing collective resistances, as Aisha Kadol said during the first day, finding space in authoritarian spaces to voice their resistance and their thoughts. But women are not very good in communicating their future visions of a different society, of a different world. And one of the reasons is that this requires a little bit more bold statement and belief in yourself about your thoughts, your imagination for the future. I mean, we live in an era of dystopias. We lost our utopias. What is the future that we all inspire, and what kind of vision, what kind of future inspires us to work together? I think this can come from women-only networks. And I do want to emphasize the importance of keeping women networks in creating ideas, imagining future, imagining utopias for the society, because women speak better when they are together. We can't change our environment so that this thought leadership and this future vision can be expressed and listened to and responded by the society. We need to have this, spaces for women to feel encouraged and free to create this future vision that inspires everybody. So in addition to everything else, I suggest that we should keep women networks in all spheres of life, academia, in civil society, wherever. And we need to interact between those different networks so that we can develop a different vision for a better society in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, we have something like 15, 16, 17 minutes left, and I think we should turn to and take some questions from the participants. For example, there's a question. Actually, Melsa has a wonderful question. It was the first question that came up. As the oldest institution after the church, how can academy transform to an agent of feminist revolution? Anybody? Okay, oldest institution after the church, and even church is transforming, of course, but how can academy transform to an agent of feminist revolution? Any thoughts? Anybody from the round table to respond to Melsa's question? Melsa, you can respond to your own question too, if you want. I mean, I would prioritize other people, but.
Well, I think Astrid responded to that question in a way, so maybe
right.
Elaborate on it more, because she did not refer to academia as one of the oldest institutions. She mentioned what can be done by bringing, and her response was bringing women into the positions of power. But how can we do that in a sustainable way? We've seen many examples of institutions where women come to the top and then they go, they leave, and the institution remains as a male-dominant organization with the culture, entrenched culture of male dominance. So how can we transform the cultural fabric of institutions as old as academia so that the improvements are sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think I was slightly flippant in the response to your answer, saying filling the institution with female leaders. I do think it is essential to do that, because for me, that creates, well, it has the potential at least to create the necessary culture change that you're referring to that makes that change sustainable. I'm a great believer that culture change often is initiated by action plans, by those external pressures that make organization institutions think and act. Because like in cognitive behavioral therapy, if you get used to things being in a certain way and the thought patterns, the behavioral patterns, they align behind particular actions that need to achieve a particular goal, an institutional culture will change because people who come into an institution or into an organization new will learn that as the normative culture. So I think it is a long haul, and I think the challenge really is to maintain that flow of female leadership, but the more female leaders you have and the more mentoring, the more opportunities are created, the easier that will become. So for me, the cornerstone is to have more female leaders in an organization, because that can kickstart, so to speak, all those other things that I think will eventually lead to that sustainable culture change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are other questions. One of the participants, points to a different issue we didn't raise, perhaps specifically. Most panel discussants at this leadership-focused conference are mid-career to senior positions. Among my fellow newly minted PhDs, perhaps the greatest underlying career concern is precarity. We're trying to establish careers in a job market where there are high demands and few secure jobs, period. This is true. 0-hour contracts, unremunerated labor, short-term contracts, and expected international mobility are the norm. Beyond mentorship for an increasingly shrinking number of positions, how can feminist leadership and the strategies proposed at this conference address the challenges faced by early career researchers? Again, the net is going broader. Anybody who would like to take this question? Amazingly burning issue. I mean, this goes back to Melsa's point about, lean out, big transformative change. We need to change everything. Yes, globalization, but what type? Structures of globalization perhaps need to change to respond to this issue. I mean, I have a daughter who's in this particular age group and seeking a career in academia. I'm facing similar problems. So I know these are burning issues for the next generation that Maria and Milica all pointed out as the group that we should look at to mobilize and socialize students, for example, and the younger generation, include them, encourage them to participate, and listen to them and their needs. And here, there are burning needs. But how could a transformative gender equality, minded leadership respond to such a problem that has very serious structural reasons? I mean, all this issue of agency and structure come into the picture, of course, with this particular type of a problem. So how do we balance this, or how do we begin responding to these important structural issues that have implications for precarity? I guess we can perhaps, underline the importance of the big picture, and keep in mind the everyday resistance that Maria Lucinda was underlying, that we should, because we can't do, this change structures on, immediately, perhaps begin, taking small steps and trying to, pull and push to accommodate their needs and give priority to them, and to these people in positions of precarity, and push for policies for people who are in these positions of precarity. And move to another question.
May I say something? Well, yes. I think, in fact, it is not only a gender issue, it's a more structural. That's why we think to take an holistic approach to tackle inequality of opportunities of youth, of the young generation. If we look at unemployment rates, not only lack of opportunities to follow an academic career, but it's much more than that. And of course, here, universities have a very important role to play, because in fact, education, research, we contribute to form the decision makers, and you can inform better policies in different domains, social, economic strategies, and so on, development strategies at large. I think that we should take this more holistic perspective. Regarding specifically young female researchers, of course, I think that mentoring is really very, very important. Try to promote self-confidence for women. I think it's really very, very important. So to communicate values and objectives very clearly, and also mobilize also men to change for a structural change regarding gender roles at large. I think this is really very important actions that we should take in the university. And of course, this means a division of power and a division of resources, because one of the problems is the concentration of resources in a small group of people. So I think that this awareness of inequalities, that's something we should consider and take a human rights approach in our curriculums in different degrees is crucial to address this kind of problems and inequalities of opportunities. And of course, this concentration of power, it can be at the political level in big powers, or at the institutional level and so on. That's something we should address and change the way we are organized in our own societies. So from the micro level, I would say the family, the place where we work, different organizations, the state, supranational organizations. So I think that we should rethink and mobilize ourselves in order to co-create innovative responses, because if we look at environmental problems, all these big challenges, complex, weak problems, we need to find a way to address them and to promote the participation of everyone in a more collaborative way, not to reproduce dependencies and so on.
Thank you, Lucinda. A comment came from Maria Lopez Veloso to Melsa's question, and she says, I would say that academia is even older than the church. Think about Greeks and Romans and how difficult it is to find examples like Hypatia or Aspasia. Anyway, and another question, what would you say about the relationship between academic feminism with institutional feminism and feminism as a social movement? In your countries, do they go hand in hand?
I think,
Milicia?
yeah.
Oh, and Milicia and then
Yes,
Octavio?
For me, it's very important, this question, no? How is the relation, no, between the academic or feminism and the social movement, no? And I think in Spain, the feminism, the academic feminism is very, very far from the social movement some many times. No? University is very close to bands, cultural institution, political, but is very far from the real movement of people. No? And I think it's very important in this subject, no? We are talking today, construct a close relationship between university and social movement, and in this case, feminists as a social movement. No?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Milica?
Maria Silvestre, this is really, really a very important question, and very important moment in what we are doing. And for Slovenia, I can say that academia and institutional feminism and social movements have different periods of cooperation. I would say that this relationship is an uneasy one and complex one, and there were times of cooperation and also the times of conflict, especially between academics and institutional feminists and institutional feminists and social movements participants, for example. I can recollect maybe only two issues in which they all three cooperate very efficiently together. One was quotas for gender quotas for politics, in which in Slovenia all three parts cooperated very, very nicely, and they were successful at the end. And the other was around the abortion right, which was in Slovenia written in the constitution, and there were attempts, and there are still attempts to abolish this from the constitution. And in these two issues, they were supported each other, but otherwise they are, I would say, scattered, interest driven, etc.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. It's easier to achieve a leadership role in a community with more women than men. For instance, in areas like geography or environment, biology, chemistry, etc., where there are more women as students or professors or others than men, does that influence the opportunity to achieve a leadership role position? And there was another question. We know that there are less women running for highest positions, which leads to the existence of more men competing with less women. And I don't know if this is an adverse cause to women. So either one of these questions, anyone of you taking up either one of these questions before we close the session and turn to Gülru?
Well, I think that maybe in areas like engineering, for instance, or well, the STEM areas, when the problem starts with the recruitment process of students, the opportunities are less, or it is even more difficult than, of course, in social sciences and humanities. Of course, so this matters, but this doesn't mean that also in these scientific domains there aren't gender inequalities. But in fact, the situation is much worse in environments when women are still a minority. So I agree that's perhaps why in the case of geography that we were in before in the Faculty of Humanities, the fact that there are more women create more opportunities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think.
Yeah, but I think that when we're talking about this kind of problem, I think the problem is before university. I think we have to work before in education in school in this kind of feminization, masculinization of many areas of knowledge, of jobs. But I think when we find this problem in the university, it's difficult to change this the situation. The problem is before.
Yeah, but there is also a question of social prestige of different disciplines. And in the case of geography, at least in Portugal and spatial planning, it's interesting to notice that, as I've mentioned, geography in Portugal now is more prestigious than when I was a student. And that's why we succeed to become an autonomous school within the context of our university. And at the same time, two universities merged. So it's interesting, this process. But what happened is that when I was a student, the share of women was much higher than now. Once geography became more prestigious within the context of different disciplines, the share of female students decreased. So this is, in fact, another problem that we should be aware of, because there are other kinds of inequalities and power relations within the context of the university as a whole. So it's also important to be aware of this.
Okay, I saw another question, but perhaps our time is up. I'll just read the question. It was in Turkish, and it was the question asked about the institutional culture and the structure of the institutions in facilitating gender equality, and if mainstreaming gender equality was important for this particular culture. Definitely yes, and I think many of the presentations responded to this very important question as well. And now I am going to thank all the participants of the roundtable, and I think it was a very inspiring session. Thank you very much indeed. And I would like to thank the organizers and turn the floor to Gülru for closing the conference. Thank you, Gülru. Thank you, everybody, and please, Gülru.
Thank you so much. Without taking too much time, I would like to actually give the word to Maria Lopez Veloso, who's the coordinator of Gearing Roles, to say some concluding remarks. Please, Maria.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try to be brief, but I took so many notes during the 3 days, and everything was so interesting that it will be difficult to summarize all the things that we've been through along these 3 days. First of all, I would like to start by a huge thank to the Sabancı team, to our 3 colleagues, Aise, Gülru, and Ilayda, for their amazing job in organizing this event in a challenging environment of translating a conference that was thought and foreseen to be a face-to-face event, a coalition building event, also to be together, to meet, and they move everything to an online setting in a very difficult context, being in charge of many, many other things. So a huge thanks to all the Sabancı team. Second, I would like to mention that this is our second conference. The first one was also led by our colleagues, Lucinda, Fonseca, and Margarita, Alina from Portugal last year. They are aligned with the ERA priorities. So the first conference was on career development. This second conference is aligned with leadership and position and decision making. And the third conference that will take place next year, hopefully in Estonia. Let's see what coronavirus has to say about this. But let's hope that we will meet in Estonia. It will be around the issue of mainstreaming gender in research context. So having said this, I think that we've been through 3 days of interesting reflections and discussions around the topic of gender. We started the first day with the inspiration and of former and current leaders from Sabancı University, and also our keynote speaker, Professor Mangala Subramanian, who encouraged us from her experience and expertise to reflect about learning from the wisdom of others. And I really liked the wording of this, learning from wisdom of others. She also spoke about trust, solidarity, and respect. And this is something that also the discussant Aise Kadioglu stressed, the need for respect. The second day, we started with an activity targeting students and university community. And we enjoyed a really challenging and interesting debate on how to find and create non-sexist information in the internet. We have engaged students from different countries such as Turkey, Italy, Spain, and we have organized this event even in Basque, which is of course a minority language. And it is important for us because, of course, as it has been pointed out by Eduardo Ruiz-Vieite this morning, or other colleagues like Lucinda in this roundtable, the students and new generations are key for the work that we are developing. So I would like to thank also the colleagues from Wikimedia for helping us and for supporting us with this event. After the community engagement activity, we were touched by the inspiring stories of the civil society organizations, and they stressed the role that we all must play as actors for gender equality and for a collective benefit. We finished the second day with the inspiration provided by our sister projects in Turkey. In Gearing Roles, we strongly believe that the learning from others' approach is important. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but build on already existing and inspiring experiences to create a culture of equality. And from this session and from the 2 sessions held today, we gather so many important points. On the one hand, the aim of this conference was to reflect around leadership, and we can see from the figures that we started seeing from the very beginning that still there is a need of encouraging female leaders and the access of female to leadership position in academia. Also, our colleagues Lady and John, with the research that they perform, pointed out that decision-making positions are still highly masculinized. And for that, it is important that we put in place measures to balance this representation of power, as Simonetta Manfredi from Oxford Brookes made the cause for positive actions this morning. Also, mentoring programs and role models were highlighted across the 3 days as a useful tool to prevent this underrepresentation of women. We hope that our mentoring program, Feliz, that is currently being developed by our colleagues from FECID, will contribute to this aim of empowering women and helping to access them to leadership positions. But of course, to fix the system, we also need leaders, and it was great to have them this morning talking about the challenges that they are facing. They highlighted the role that the European Union and the EU project can make to achieve this gender equality challenge. As Athanasia Monglu, our policy officer that also joined us during the first day, stressed the momentum that we are living with the European Commission team committed to gender equality, and the forthcoming requirement for gender equality plans as eligibility criteria for Horizon Europe are important, but also as Fuad Keyman stressed this morning, European projects also provide us the opportunity to networking and working with others together. Our leaders mentioned different common challenges that they face in the page for gender equality: the need of data, the definition of merit and the merit-based leadership models, the implication that leadership has in terms of work-life balance, and the types of leadership models that we can implement in our institutions, the difference between parity and representative leadership in different institutions, how sometimes in institutions that are highly feminized, then the leadership positions try to be equal when the representation is not equal in the institution. Also, the threat of anti-gender, anti-feminism movements was raised as one of the challenges, and also the gender neutrality mirage. Our last roundtable provided us insights on actions and strategies and solidarities. I don't have time to analyze all the key points that were raised. I thank all our colleagues for their participation. I really appreciate especially Lucinda's enthusiasm as always. I really like the call for feminist revolution that Octavio performed. And I do see Milica as a leader within our consortium. So I really think that we must overcome our own imposter syndrome and see ourselves as leaders. But I would like to summarize a little bit the characteristics that the leaders have summarized about transformative leadership. And I will start by the point that Melsa brought us about creating a vision and the need to empower women, the need for sisterhood, the need to still vote for a women network. Also, Astrid pointed out a really important point, that is the leadership model and how to adapt to society. We need to be aware of the problem before starting to transform the reality. Another features that they mentioned was co-creation, awareness raising, mentoring and role models, building internal and external coalitions, and the need for a strategic framing, the importance of rankings and institutional policies, the open acknowledgement of the problem, the learning from others, the campaigning for qualities for women. So thank you so much for all your participation. I know that it has been a challenge for all of us to be 3 days in front of a screen and in a computer instead of enjoying the streets of Istanbul, but we really hope that we will be able to enjoy them in the future. And we would like to see you all in our next conference in Estonia next year.
Thank you so much. And can we give a silent clap to our translators, Bahar Eriş, Ceren Bektaş, and Narin Koray Saka, and for the all behind the scenes team, Berfin, Berfu, Oğuz, Begüm, Enis, Fulya, who are actually the people who made this conference possible.
Also,
we can take a screenshot if everyone want to be in the picture, turn on their camera.
Okay. I think Barfu's taking, I'll try as well. So as Guru said yesterday, say gender. I'll wait for the chat box to disappear. Okay. Thank you. I'm done. And see you in
the consortium
15 minutes with the consortium, yes.
We'll see in an informal gathering in 15 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Ayrı linkten geleceğiz herhalde, değil mi? O yüzden kapatalım bunu.
Hı hı.
Tamam, görüşürüz.
Hadi bye.
Saat var mı oraya girmek için? Bir şey belirledik mi? Senin mikrofon kapalı Berfu. Ay 15 dakika kalmış. Zaten saat falan yokmuş.
Pardon ya, duyulmuyormuş sesim galiba. 20'de buluşsak olur mu acaba? Ama çok erken mi olacak o zaman? 1:30'da çünkü bir 5 dakika ara verip gelebiliriz belki. Başlangıcı sen mi yapıyorsun Fulya?
Evet. Yani hani yok yani Gülru bir merhaba deyip size bırakırız dedi. Ay buna ne oluyor?
Tamamdır.
Sonra da zaten ben hoş geldiniz, hoş gittiniz falan filan. İşte ilk hemen zaten çok yoruldu insanlar dolayısıyla.
Yani büyük kısmı da gelmeyebilir çünkü bu etkinlikten bile ayrılan çok fazla insan vardı.
Bakarız ya, tamam. Hı-hı. O zaman hızlıca...
Tamam, 25 geçe buluşalım o zaman en geç.
Tamam. Mentimetre ile ilgili bir sıkıntı olacak mı?
Yok, yaptım, istiyorsan deneme yapalım bir tane.
Hadi yap şimdi de.
Hadi yapalım. Ben bir de bir tane liste hazırladım. Hani böyle olur da computer sound falan, hani biraz böyle ortamı yumuşatmak, rahatlamak, relaxation.
Breakout room'lara gitmiyor ama sesiniz değil mi? Olmaz.
Tamam, yani hani olur da sıkışırsak en kötü böyle bir şeye de dönebiliriz.
Chatten,
sırasını alttan gelir.
Chatten yolladım. Birkaç kelime yazın bakayım. Sıfırlayayım sizi yazdıktan sonra.
Atıyorum şimdi.
Recording'i durdurmamışız.
Enter a word.